mills that are going on is a big helpful rather than cutting. This is an easy way to get money. And one of the things that as a small business owner, I look at is permitting. It's awful to get permits. Small business is what's going to save our state. And we need to make that permitting system easier, more streamlined. Anything you could do for that information would be helpful. So thank you all for what you do. Bye.
Thank you, Janet. Gerald Christensen, followed by John Northcott.
Carol said he was going to have to leave.
Okay, I guess we'll have to get with Carol later. John Northcott, followed by Kenda Hewley.
Thank you for holding the session. I'm John Northcott. Primarily going to deal with a little bit of history. Prior to the state getting the oil revenues, many of the legislators prior to going to session would utter the phrase, they were going to practice fiscal responsibility. That seems to have gone by the wayside a little bit. Right now we have 4 projects, the LIO building, which doesn't seem to have had the proper legislative or contract review. Other 2 projects, the Connect Bridge, the Point Mac rail system, and the Juneau Road for the mine and the ferry terminal. I have asked about the federal funding on those and how that's allocated, because I'm told that they can't stop work on these things or they might have to repay the federal money. So my question is, once a bunch of federal money is received, how is it allocated and spent on these projects? Is it spent first, or is it just based on percentage of work completed? I question the need of the Connect Bridge and Point Mac Railroad, because right now a lot of the assumptions are that it's going to be a resource for getting minerals from northern states, and most of Point McKenzie in that area over there is wetlands, and we have a bit of a challenge getting mining permits approved, and that is one of the big features justifying the Connect Bridge, plus the transportation, and the rail system is supposed to be saving extra transportation costs for the development of the interior. I'll just close with one more thing. It seemed like, or 2 things actually. Last year, a lot of the legislators' time was seemed to be devoted on preparatory work for tapping the permanent fund. I believe at some point in time that will have to be done, because my limited research has indicated that it's going to be at least 2 years before oil even gets up to $50 a barrel. And as an example, years ago there was a move to move the capital to someplace other than Juneau. They had a vote. Everybody agreed that it should be moved. They had a second vote to pick 3 locations where it could be moved. It was approved. And then when it came down to the funding of the thing, that was disapproved. Maybe we should go to that same system on some of these major projects and let the people decide what's really important and when it is.
Thank you, John. Kenda Hewley, followed by Scott Ogan.
Hi, I'm Cathy, and I was born in the territory of Alaska and been here all my life. I will start with the things I support. I support cutting the UAA 2 administrations and making it all one, because there are 3. That'll chop a whole bunch of money. You can put it into teachers and programs and stop raising tuition. I support work-free buildings and walkways. I support a sales tax if you don't include food, medicine, sanitary items, diapers, and birth control, because those affect the low-ended people. I think income tax is okay as long as it's only on any person that earns over $25,000 per year. I support public transportation, which includes nights and weekends, so that people that don't have jobs that have low income potential, and the jobs that are available are offered obviously at night and weekends, that they could actually get there if they don't have a car. I also support the one that Marty brought up about, I think it's HB 276. But that I do not support cutting rural schools, because possibly that might be the only community positive thing that they have in their area. And I do believe that even if they have 10 kids, that's critical to their areas. And I don't support parents being able to opt out of sex ed. I was raised in a fundamental Christian family. I think that not having received all the correct information from my family, because they didn't talk about things, not that they weren't nice and all that, but I learned my stuff from the street, and I didn't really learn all the right things necessarily. I think that the ones that actually need it the most are the ones that are going to miss it, because they're going to be able to opt out, and they'll be the ones to opt out. That's all I have to say.
Scott Ogan, followed by Jason Ortez.
Good morning. My name is Scott Ogan. I'm a recovering legislator, and I'm also a recovering bureaucrat. So I've had the opportunity to work in both administration and the legislature. I want to talk about the disciplinary process when you're a manager. I managed a team of professionals of 10 or 12 people, and with all due respect to the union folks in here, the unions have got the managers wrapped around the axle. If you have an employee that's underperforming, it is an incredible time suck, excuse the phrase, it's the best way to describe it, to try to deal with it. You have to have 7, 8, 9 disciplinary hearings. I mean, I think there ought to be a 3 strikes law. You know, if you get 3 disciplinary hearings and you get good due process and you don't correct your act, you're out. The next thing, I think we ought to have Sheriff Joe boot camps for offenders. Set up a big weather report, 3 hops in a cot. Instead of a 3-day sentence, get a 2-day sentence through the misdemeanors off the books for $50 a day instead of whatever hard bed costs, $170, $180 a day. I cut my budget in DNR 50%. I eliminated my job. I could have taken another job because of my seniority, but I didn't want to bump a nice young guy that had a family, and I was ready to, I've been threatening to retire for years anyway, so I decided to do it. But I eliminated lower level people. I kept my subject matter experts, and we went on, Ian and I managed litigation against the feds. We went on to win a major case in the U.S. District Court on who owns the navigable waters. So we did it with half the staff. We finished it with half the staff. We have most of the work done on it, but there's other issues we're working too. All I'm hearing about is new taxes cut the permanent fund. All the hearings, I applaud the fact that the House shut down and focused on it. There's been no hearings on repealing existing statutes. I want you to repeal the marijuana law as soon as you can. You can repeal it after 2 years. And I'll wrap up by saying you cannot tax yourself into prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Jason Ortez or Ortiz, I'm not sure which. Ortiz. And then followed by Kim Evans.
I'm going to try my best to stay under the 2-minute time frame. So I'm a Palmer resident. Shelley Hughes is my representative. 5 kids. I have 3 in the school district and 2 that aren't. I can touch on tons of different topics and ideas, but I'm a state employee. I do think that there could be an amazing amount of cuts in state government, and again, I'm not going to touch on that. Some of the things I think there's huge opportunities on. I've prepared some stuff and I'm going to talk about it. I'll email all you guys so you guys have the information as well, because it's complex. Medical tourism. On 2/5/16, Department Administration Commissioner testified to the House and Labor Committee that the Division of Retirement and Benefits is looking into ways for the Alaska Care Plan to encourage and promote travel for medical treatment out of state for services because it's way cheaper. So just going to Seattle, for instance, a lot of people that go get medical stuff can't get it done here, need to go somewhere else. There's no reason why we should be having to travel to Seattle and do things because our plan won't cover something here. The state pays for these services. The state, it comes out of the budget, huge amount of money for medical. So if they notice medical special services, DRB finds that specialist charges in Alaska are often 300 to 400% higher for the same services out of state. So either they fail to mention, or Aetna may cover, may be able to cover that airfare if it's pre-authorized for a plan member to travel out of state for the necessary medical care. The DRB is directing that per diem claims be denied in these types of cases, and the state that has the actual travel costs, they're not being paid. Rather, in lieu of these actual costs, the per diem is being paid. So it's really, really complex. There's tons of money to be saved there, and it's the state. There's no reason why we can't look into that. I'm not going to touch on the appeal stuff, but transition. The committee was told several times about this transition from HealthSmart, the prior third-party administrator for the Alaska Care, and Aetna. The fact is that Aetna has been the third-party administrator for over 2 years now, since January of 2014, and we are now well beyond the expected time frame of a transition being the source of the problems with Aetna claims processing and the overzealous denials. Rather, interested legislators should take a closer look at the structure of the current agreement between the DRB and Aetna in Section 5 Administrative Services Fees. Includes a fee billing basis structure called the Itemized Billing Review, IBR. With the Aetna's fees no cap being calculated, it's about a 30% savings. There's clearly creates an incentive for Aetna to increase its total partial denial of provider claims as being non-covered, inaccurate, to boost their fees. There's also a category called the Facility Charge Review with the same billing basis, 30% savings right there. Last thing, just touch on it real quick here. I realize that most of the legislative hearings are now just being related to the budget, but I'd like to encourage Representative Culver, who's not here today, to see if the House and Labor Commerce Committee would be willing to hold another session regarding Aetna in order to receive public testimony about the Alaska Care retiree and active plan members. All of the committee members seem very interested and engaged in the DR presentation on the 2.5. And they've heard the issues from the DRB. I think it would be a good idea to get the perspective from the plan members regarding those issues and everything, because again, there's tons of money to be saved just in what we currently have. Not talking about how we can, there's tons of areas to cut, but those are just some of the things I think that we can look at. It's currently in there. It's not new stuff that we need to look at, just to revisit and save some money. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jason. We're like that in writing. It's complicated. Kim Evans, followed by Beth Freed.
Hi, I'm Kim Evans. I was transplanted as a seedling when I was about 3, and spent about a quarter century between Palmer and about a quarter century in Anchorage. I am a school teacher, so you can think about me being a union advocate, or you can say I'm in the trenches with short people all day long. So I reread my copy of Hammond's memoir the last couple weeks because I really wanted to go back and just review what he really said about the permanent fund dividend and his take on income tax and sales taxes. And I strongly encourage you to consider not slashing and burning the budget. I do not believe we can cut our way to a healthy state any more than we can tax ourselves into prosperity. I don't believe slash and burn will help us in the end. You will end up cutting essential services, education, public safety, roads, transportation. I've seen, yes, our budgets have been increasing, but I've seen class sizes increasing too. So the budgets have been cut in the last few years. We have seen fewer aides in the classroom supporting some very, very difficult kiddos in the classroom besides the larger class. The people in the trenches, please come visit the classroom. I encourage you, come to Swanson Elementary, come see what I do in the library there. But those further cuts, I believe, will not help. I encourage you instead to reinstate the income tax. I believe it is the most progressive. I don't want to see people losing out some much needed income from the permanent fund dividend, which will end up happening. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Followed by Mike Coons.
Thank you for coming again today, like everyone else. I'm very grateful to you for doing the work that you're doing, as well as being here and allowing me to stand in for the person who's really supposed to be looking at that that stupid thing. I've said to you before, we have to cut the vacant jobs that aren't being filled. You've got a hiring freeze. There are 4,000 jobs with a totaling $250 million worth of payroll that's not being paid but being used, and that was through a FOIA of the Alaska Policy Forum. Bring trainers up, stop sending people out of state. I don't know, we've been saying this since I got here in 1982. It doesn't seem to be happening. We have huge millions and millions of dollars of people traveling out for training. The permanent fund was intended to serve as an alternative to us using up our resources. We barely tapped our resources, our natural resources. Start where everybody else has been saying, smooth the permitting process, let people get jobs, and let people start working on how we were supposed to pay for this state before you go anywhere near reorganizing something that is working in government, and that is the permanent fund. Please work with our federal representatives to have the federal government get out of our permitting processes. And once again, the senior citizens, you take all of the money out of one group of recipients. If you're going to do cuts, make sure the bureaucrats cannot make those cuts impact the citizens before they are impacted in their departments. That is just insanity. If you must have a tax, the motor fuel tax, limited to the aviation industry, where great big jets are landing in our airports, picking up fuel and taking off, that, from my understanding of talking to aviators, is they don't mind if you raise their fuel tax a little bit. They're not having a hard time with it flying around place to place. They can afford a little increase in the aviation fuel tax, but it would be a big tax on FedEx and UPS and those folks, probably not one that would impact their ability to function. Finally, my phone just went black. Consolidate education administration. I worked in it in Barrow for 6 years. There were 40 of us in the admin building for 8 schools spread across thousands of miles. We didn't need that many people, but you have to have the locals working. Maybe we need to stop thinking that way. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Beth. Mike Coons, followed by Marcia Healy.
Yeah, my name is Mike Coons. I'm from Palmer. We need to cut the budget, yes, and I totally agree with the others about a $4.5 billion for this session. However, where to cut is what all of you are asking us. We're asking you to cut, but a lot of people say cut. So I'm kind of an out-of-the-box kind of person. Jim Culver is wanting to cut head of departments to $145,000 a year. Right direction, but not far enough. At committee hearings, I hear members thanking those nominees for department heads and are those wanting to serve in a department like ethics, police, council, etc. So are these positions a job, or are they a service to our state? I believe a service that someone wants to do and has a history of employment that qualifies them to take on this role. So why does a servant of the people need $145,000, or it's like some of our chancellors and other department heads, $250,000 a year? Now, I've not heard from Senate or House committees having or asking the financial history of candidates. I think that's something we might want to look at. What did you do before you wanted this position? What was your annual pay? What was your debt? How many credit cards and how much owed? How many cards and how much in debt on those? What is the income to debt ratio of your household? Why these questions? Simple. If you can't live within your own means, then how would you run a department that lives within the budget constraints? Evaluates programs as to value added or a constant rise in funding needs without solid performance on those dollars. As to salaries, start at $75,000, max out at $100,000 if they're good enough to stay in the job for administration changes. Goes back to the servant, and if the person fiscally is responsible for their home and huge salary isn't needed anyway. As to university, since I got a few seconds more, I'm totally for cutting the university cost. Chancellors, before chancellors have got private state cars, $22,000 a year. Why are we paying for that? Especially when they're making $250,000 a year. I'm all for UAA cuts. kill all sin tax legislation that's come before the committees. It should never get out of committee at all. Yes on HB 31, no on H276, because as a paramedic, straightening bodies and families out of cars because of drunk drivers, if the courts have said, you have violated and you have killed people, or you have